the potential further dismantling of the administrative state. There is a Supreme Court ruling expected to drop sometime this week or next. The net of this is that Congress for a long time has delegated its authority to make laws to regulatory agencies. Think the EPA, think the SEC, or whatever three-letter alphabet agency you want. What happens is these agencies step in and they make rules and regulations. That's perfectly fine. But then what will happen is that these agencies will then prosecute, or through their own in-house court system, administrative law systems, people or companies who go against it. Said another way, think back to faceless bureaucrats, whatever, right, enforcing and nitpicking to death companies with regulation. A good example of this would be the EPA. Sure, there might be some common sense things you want to protect the environment, but at the same time, if you have an out-of-control agency that doesn't really have a check placed on it, in this case, the check being the recourse for an individual or company to seek relief through the trial system, that is to say, a trial system by jury of peers, not necessarily a trial system in an administrative law court, you run into issues. So what's been happening recently is that the Supreme Court basically comes out and says Congress cannot further delegate its legislative authority without providing clear guidance to three-letter agencies. The three-letter agencies essentially then lose their mandate. What this means in practice is that all of the nitpicking regulations, all of, again, going on against various regulators, whatever, right? All the nitpicking rules, whatever, right? Have the potential to become null and void because essentially the Supreme Court is rug pulling these agencies' ability to make the law. Now, it's not to say the rules will disappear, or if they do disappear, that they won't come back. Rather, it's just to say, look, Congress, you need to do your effing job, and you either need to make the rules yourself, or you need to provide very clear guidance that can be understood by the average American or the average person of what they can and cannot do. But you can't set up this Kafka-esque thing where you basically surrender your power to a three-letter agency with no clear direction, and then have the three-letter agency be the one to interpret your poorly defined guidance of what you want the policies to be, and then serve as judge, jury, and executioner when someone runs afoul of what you think would be the law, because you can't keep everything has to do with administrative law procedures or through your own administrative law courts. Anyways, Josh, if this goes through, this will be a huge event to the system of the way it's been since I guess World War II. And arguably going back to Friedman, this is something that needs to happen. Friedman oftentimes talks about there has to be a change in the relation of the federal government to itself. Josh, this would be a major change in the role and the relationship of the federal government to the federal government. Either way, big thing, and the macro takeaway from this is that if you suddenly have a lot of regulation, or the burden of regulation vastly pared back, I would assume that would be bullish for companies, particularly for entrepreneurs who are trying to start up. As to put it bluntly, there's much less bullshit for them to work through.
Yeah, hopefully. Almost all the issues that we arrive to with high prices are due to government intervention. Let's just go an easy example. Let's just go to oil. Everybody's been to the gas pump lately, and it has absolutely skyrocketed in value. Why is this? We have massive push for the ESG movement that is preventing entrepreneurs and oil businesses from actually producing oil. That is preventing that. That is increasing the prices drastically. We can see the exact same thing if we go to coal. The volatility on these movements are just absolutely extreme, and that is because of these government agencies. So if we kind of got rid of these, which I think is highly unlikely, but if we happen to, it would allow business owners to bring down the prices of these commodities because they would have the actual incentive to go out and mine, produce, and make money. And that allows the price of these commodities to come down.
Yeah. Or just if I can build on just for 1 second. I'm not going to take a stance on we want 100% regulation or we want no regulation. Rather, what I'm trying to say is that the government works for the people. We do not work for the government. And so if there's going to be a regulation and a company wants to do something, let's say drill for coal or whatever, right? Or mine coal, drill for oil, whatever, right? There needs to be a way that if a regulatory agency says, no, you can't do that the company, the individual can push back and say, well, why can't I do it? I've hired a team, I understand how to protect the ecology, I understand how to drill in a safe manner, et cetera, et cetera. And if the agency still wants to stick its head in the sand, there is a mechanism for the company or the person to seek relief outside of the agency itself. That's a big thing. And more importantly, and this is true for the agency, if Congress can just provide clear guidelines, to the various regular agencies that everyone who's affected can give input on, that would be far different than this current, ridiculous system we have right now, which is just the only people who can navigate it and successfully overcome it are people who have the money to fight back. And even then, when they use the money to fight back, they protect their own interests, but then they just put up regulatory moats so the small guys can't get in. Again, further crushing the small guys or the entrepreneurs who are trying to get started and potentially find new ways, better ways of doing things. Bottom line, if this rebuke goes forward for the administrative state, it's going to be good for entrepreneurs in the long run.
And that is good for your bills in the future.